I knew who the Taliban were growing up as a kid. I knew exactly who they were because I lived just over the border from them. On August 5th, 2002, armed gunmen came to my school with the intent to kill as many kids there as possible. I was very much on board with the idea of ousting the Taliban, and I wanted to be in a place that was really actually doing it. We got lured into a complex IED ambush. My name is Luke Ryan. I was an Army Ranger from 2010 to 2014.
America is at war.
I was born in the faraway land of Michigan. When I was 3 years old, my family moved to Pakistan. We went up to a place called Gilgit, Pakistan. It's up kind of in the smack dab center of Kashmir. My mom was a nurse practitioner in the ICU. My dad was an eye doctor. He was a doctor in the Air Force for a little while, and then he wanted to work overseas to do aid work. That was kind of why he became a doctor in the first place. They started an eye clinic there. They're medical missionaries. We lived in the heart of the Himalayas. You know, it was way up there. And, you know, Gilgit wasn't a tiny, tiny town, but it wasn't big either. And I mean, on a clear day, you could see the 7th tallest mountain in the world from our house. Most days we didn't have electricity, we didn't have hot water, didn't have anything like that. We'd have electricity every 3 days, maybe. I lived there for 10 years, so by the end of the 10 years, we had electricity pretty much all day, most days. So, you know, it got better. There were a handful of Western families in that area that ran the hospital with us, alongside all the Pakistanis who ran the hospital with us as well. My dad was really good friends with the guy who owned the local movie store. I watched all sorts of movies, and so I got really enamored with storytelling during that time. It was also kind of a window into American culture that I didn't really have because I would only come back to the United States for a month or two every 2 years. And through that, writing became a natural extension of that passion for storytelling. So I started to write all the time. You know, the first thing I wrote was a short book about Boba Fett that was like 30 crudely handwritten pages long. I kept that up. I never stopped ever since I was a kid. My dad would read everything that I wrote, my mom too, and we would have long discussions about the movies that we watched, the themes there being an obvious example of good versus evil. Movies that display acts of physical courage is a really interesting concept to me. I mean, really, that was my love for storytelling was born in northern Pakistan. My older brother went off to Murray Christian School, MCS, which was a boarding school. I had about 30 kids in my class when I was there, and I went up there when I was in 7th grade. When I say British boarding school, people get all sorts of images and ideas. MCS was a pretty modern boarding school. You know, there were a lot of obviously British kids there, but also Australians, New Zealanders, Canadians, Americans, you know, and Pakistanis too. I absolutely loved growing up in northern Pakistan. Living nestled in the middle of one of the most beautiful places in the world, and I almost said arguably, but really not. It's incredible. The only thing greater than that were the people that lived there. I mean, the people that lived there were amazing. That's not to say that it isn't a place that's mired in a lot of conflict. The Kargil War happened while we were there, and that was pretty much when India and Pakistan were on the brink of nuclear war. It's a Cold War, so you just don't know if you're going to get nuked. Ambiguous idea that you could die at any point, I guess, but it's so far removed from your child brain that it's really hard to grasp, but it's still there, so. And then the other one would be the Sunni and Shiite conflicts that were just constantly going on that would occasionally bubble up into these just incredible proportions. And there were a lot of conflicts throughout the 90s. And one conflict that I was indirectly exposed to that I didn't realize would have such a large impact on my life was I knew who the Taliban were growing up as a kid. I knew exactly who they were because I lived just over the border from them. My 9/11 story is a little bit different than a lot of people's because of the time difference. So it was nighttime for me. Me and my friend, we were having a StarCraft LAN party. He had a couple computers and we were gonna play StarCraft, and his sister was watching the news, and it was September 11th. I mean, it was happening right then. And
this just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center.
I was in 7th grade, and I just had no concept of what it meant, the gravity of it, how it would impact my life, long term. I really had no clue. Then things started to slowly change, and I started to realize what a big deal it was, because the Marines were offering evacuation for American families who wanted to go back to the United States. We left for a little while. It got really dangerous there. I mean, the Taliban came over from Afghanistan, after the invasion. And not just them, but it just caused all of this unrest, all of these fractured groups and politics. Basically, the Taliban pushed over after the invasion into Pakistan, and everything changed, and things started getting really, really pretty dangerous pretty quickly. On August 5th, 2002, armed gunmen came to my school and with the intent to kill as many kids there as possible. I was in the library at the time. I started hearing the gunshots, and I thought it was fireworks because it was one of the seniors' birthday. So I just assumed it was fireworks until a close friend of mine's mother was shot in the arm, and she screamed, and then kind of everybody figured it out at that point. So I kind of crawled under a desk in the library and just hid there for most of it. I don't remember how long it was, but after a while, this shooting slowed and it grew more distant and eventually stopped, and then it was over. We decided to carve our names under the desk, and we're like Simon and Luke hiding from terrorists, August 5th, 2002.
The children at this school are here because their parents are from Western countries working in Pakistan to help the people of Pakistan. They are doing medical work, educational work, agricultural work, community development work. Many of them have been here for years, and they are making a contribution to this country which needs it. And anyone who thinks that this kind of behavior in any way helps Pakistan is completely off their head.
They wound up killing a few staff members. No children were killed, thankfully. Miraculous reasons, honestly, one of which was daylight savings time change. They did their research and were going to hit it during recess, and daylight savings time changed and recess changed. So, I don't really complain about daylight savings time like everybody else does. It had rained the day before, so nobody was outside. All the PE classes were inside except for one PE class on the other side of the campus, and the PE teacher had just been a missionary teacher in Afghanistan and knew what gunfire like that sounded like. So as soon as he heard it, as soon as they killed the front gate guard, he was like, got it, and moved all the kids to safety. Just looking at the side of the school, and there was like blood and flesh splattered on the wall. That was my first real experience with combat, but not the last. After the attack on my school, a lot changed for my family, because now things went from we were suffering the fate of the people around us to now some people were absolutely targeting us. So then it was time to go. The entire boarding school picked up, and a school in Thailand called Chiang Mai International School in the city of Chiang Mai was like, we'll take you. They had a whole building for us, and now all of a sudden we were transplanted in Thailand, which was a total culture shock and totally different. Just a cool place to be. My parents moved to Chiang Mai, and then my dad wound up working next door in some areas in Burma, otherwise known as Myanmar. They've worked there ever since. They live in Thailand, and they work and do aid work in Burma. I joined the Army in very early 2010. The school shooting that I was in was less of a motivating factor to joining the Army than having grown up in northern Pakistan in the 90s, knowing who the Taliban were. And, all of a sudden, my home country of origin has gone to war with them, country whose values I very much believed in, mix in a little bit of a young man's desire to just do young man things and have an adventure, and I was definitely joining the Army. I was very much on board with being a part of ousting the Taliban, and I wanted to be in a place that was really actually doing it. Growing up in the environment that I grew up in, serving was kind of one of the ultimate virtues. The military seemed like a place where I could do that to the people who were being oppressed by the Taliban, to the people who were around me, and just to serve a country whose values I really, really, really appreciated because I had lived outside of them. By the time I actually joined the Army and made it all the way there, they had mostly shifted from Iraq back to Afghanistan, which was good for me because that's what I wanted to be a part of. It was tough. I feel like my upbringing helped prepare me for it. You know, the way that my parents raised me helped prepare me for it. The way that I had always kind of gravitated toward enduring difficult things kind of prepared me for it. When I was a kid in Pakistan, me and my friends used to have competitions about, there was a glacier runoff that would fill up this little pool that my parents had built. That glacier runoff was very cold, and me and my friends would take turns and see how long we could last standing under it while it was filling the pool up. And I would always win when I was in RASP. It wasn't because I was the strongest. It wasn't because I was the smartest. It was just because, you know, I could hit these basic tasks and endure a lot of pain while, you know, still accomplishing whatever objective that I wanted to do. And eventually I was assigned to 3rd Ranger Battalion, Bravo Company. We were in like full swing of the war, and they had figured out like how to do all of these things, and I was really just plugging into those things. So I had to learn how to hit a compound with a platoon of Rangers, you know, and this was something that they had refined over and over again. It was extremely, extremely fast paced. It was the most fast paced thing that I've done in my life as far as just constant work. I did 55 missions on my first deployment in about 3.5 months. In total, I went on 4 deployments with 3rd Bat. All of them were to Afghanistan. You know, that first deployment was really eye-opening for me. You know, I had experience, you know, I had been in a school shooting when I was a kid, and it was really interesting to me to compare those 2 experiences together because, you know, a lot of people don't have that perspective. But it was difficult as a kid because I couldn't do anything. It's just, I didn't know what to do. I was still scared when I was an adult, you know, but it just didn't matter because my hands and my body and everything else, like I just knew what to do. I hadn't actually really been to Afghanistan before. I had been to the border when I was a kid, but, and you know, of my 4 deployments, the closest one was only 300 miles away from where I lived in Pakistan. So like super close, but I was actually quite surprised at how different of a country it is. At that point in the war, I wasn't interacting with very many regular Afghan people. I was like, you know, we were dealing with Taliban or like other, you know, associated groups and kind of the worst of the worst. So, you know, a lot of Rangers that painted a really bad picture in their heads of who the people who lived in Afghanistan were. But for me, you know, I knew better than that for sure. But I still I was surprised at just how much poorer it was. And that was just, I mean, that's just what happens when you have so many consecutive years of war in a place. One thing I didn't anticipate about Ranger Battalion, just because I didn't know anything, was that every person that we would interact with was kind of the worst of the worst. So like there wasn't a whole lot of ambiguity about the guys that we were going after. Like a lot of them were just like some bad people who were bad in ways that I couldn't have even really imagined beforehand. There had been a lot of times that I thought that I might die in Ranger Battalion because, like, you know, I might get shot and die in some of these other missions, but like we weren't going to lose. In early October 2013, we hit a target that really didn't seem like much of anything. We got lured into a complex IED ambush. We're there to just clear the area. We landed, on target. I was one of the first ones out with my team because, I was supposed to chase down this guy that was gonna run off. What I didn't know is that I had run all the way across like an inactive pressure plate, basically a minefield, but it wasn't plugged in yet. And they waited for us to get around it, and then they plugged it in and switched it on. So it'd be like teleporting into the middle of a minefield. I was chasing that guy off into a valley. Explosion went off there. K9 was killed, saved my life, saved the life of a couple other guys in my group. Stuff that's kind of difficult to think about, like a body part could set off an IED. Somebody can step on an IED and not get blown up themselves, but can go off somewhere else. All sorts of things like that. You can want to treat a casualty, and then, you set one off yourself. You just take one step, in the wrong direction, you set one off. Over a dozen IEDs went off, approximately 30 people wounded, 4 killed in action. We ran out of litters and Skedcos. We were using American flags. We were using any that people had rolled up on their backs, which was quite the image, American flags, just bloody, all mixed together. In the back of that 47 is definitely an image that sticks in my mind. EOD guys were really meticulously clearing the way for all those IEDs to just get out. And even that was difficult because the way that the pressure plates were built, really hard to detect. But they cleared a way for us, and, we were able to get all the survivors and wounded and dead and pack them up. And, I came out pretty 99% unscathed, physically, and just total luck with that. I view myself very much as an observer of incredible acts of heroism from the medic who was there, the PJ as well, the EOD guys, my private who was brand new to Ranger Battalion, who was 19 years old, who was just stepping up and fighting hard and working hard. The K9 that was killed in action too, his name was Yanni. I want people to live positively, and I want people to embrace life. And these guys, they died doing something that they really believed in, and I believed in it too. And if I would have died, they would probably be thinking the same thing. There are so many things that they gave up in order to do that. Having kids, watching those kids grow up, getting married, depends on the person and how far along, in life that they were, or what they would have done, just going different places, experiencing different things, there's so much to the life that we have. And when it's been, you see it cut short like that, especially in the context of these guys are at the top of their game. I mean, they absolutely would lead long, lives and successful lives. So I think it's very important to me that I don't take the fact that I walked out of that lightly. It's really important to realize the gravity and then to turn around and say, okay, what do I do with it? What do I do with all of that? Because that's a lot. And the answer is just to live, your life as best you can. I mean, it's a cliche answer, but it's not cliche when you start doing it. And especially when you do it in memory of these people. Patrick Hawkins, he was my best friend. We were privates together in Ranger Battalion in the same squad. We kind of lucked out and were mostly in the same squad all the way through. We were roommates for a long time until he got married. So we knew each other really, really well. We had been on every mission that either of us had been on. He's the type of guy that would embrace something as soon as he learned about it and just try to learn as much as he could about it. Because I was such close friends with Patrick Hawkins and we had taken such high casualties, our platoon was stood down for a while. And so I accepted the honor really of escorting Patrick Hawkins's body back to the United States. 3 others escorted the other 3 back. We all did it together. It was a whole profound journey that we did together. Incredible people, and we went on this really very moving journey together back to the United States that is very unique, even from a military's perspective. It meant a lot to me, and yeah.
This is a World War I poem by Alan Seeger. It's called I Have a Rendezvous with Death. I have a rendezvous with death at some disputed barricade when spring comes back with rustling shade and apple blossoms fill the air. I have a rendezvous with death when spring breaks back blue days and fair. It may be he shall take my hand and lead me into his dark land and close my eyes and quench my breath. It may be I shall pass him still. I have a rendezvous with death on some scarred slope of battered hill when spring comes round again this year and the first meadow flowers appear. God knows it were better to be deep, pillowed in silk and scented down, where love throbs out in blissful sleep, pulse nigh to pulse and breath to breath, where hushed awakenings are dear. But I have a rendezvous with death at midnight in some flaming town when spring trips north again this year. And I to my pledged word am true. I shall not fail that rendezvous.
After that mission, because of my TBI, they deemed me non-deployable, which was upsetting. It was not fun being in the U.S. while they were back and starting to go on missions again. But it was okay. And I started the process of getting out at that time. I never really had a mission accomplished type moment or anything like that, but I felt like that I did my part in that effort of taking them out of power. In that regard, I definitely felt like I did what I set out to do. Combat is extremely charged with purpose, right? Sometimes you'll be willing to die to just get around a corner or to get up a hill. You're willing to die for that. And then, you come back and you transition out, and now all of a sudden, the most purpose that you're going to get is going to be just a fraction of that. You're not going to die to pass this test. You don't care about it enough to die to accomplish this goal. So, it all feels a little bit hollow. I got my degree in English literature from USF in Tampa. Absolutely loved it. I'm such a nerd, and getting to read books and getting paid by the GI Bill to do it, to be at college and just learn, and that was my job. And then after that, I worked as a journalist for a bit. I've self-published 2 books of war poetry. I found that it was a way of articulating things that I had a really tough time articulating in other ways. It's a lot like music, it's very raw, emotional, but I really found it cathartic to just try to understand these feelings that I feel didn't have words to them. When I was writing my first book of war poetry, it made me realize that one of the things I missed about combat was how very much on the earth it is. Sometimes, often a very negative way, but it's still living in the present, for lack of a better term. It's right now. So I kept doing it. And, eventually dove into a novel, wrote that. My novel is called The First Marauder, and the protagonist is a 15-year-old kid who's caught up in this whole dark adventure in the post-apocalyptic, world. I was using it as well as a mechanism to kind of unearth these ideas in me. And it's intentional that he's a 15-year-old kid experiencing war for the first time, because I was, 20 when I experienced war for the first time, and I was in 8th grade when the attack on my school happened. So it's kind of in that zone in the middle there. I really enjoy taking all of the experiences in my life and siphoning it into my work, and then also into my, my novels, my poetry, any filmmaking that I do, anything creative that I do. I want to take all of these experiences. A lot of them are very negative, and it's okay. Everybody has those experiences, but I have a chance creatively to take those and to, I can't change them, but I can make something good out of them. I can inspire people to positive action. I can inspire myself. I can heal, I can help others heal. I can, there's a lot you can do with that. And, I just kind of scratched the surface of it. And I'm still digging.